They're gonna be right here. They're gonna be here any minute, okay? You just...
When Daredevil was announced to be returning, a lot of fans of the Netflix show were excited but skeptical. Excited because one of the best comic book shows ever made was coming back with the original cast reprising their roles, but skeptical because it was being revived by Marvel Studios, the geniuses behind Secret Invasion and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It only got more dubious when it was reported that Daredevil Born Again would be a straightforward case of the week legal procedural, and Matt Murdock would never don the Daredevil suit on screen. Then things looked a bit more promising when Marvel listened to those complaints and completely retooled the show by bringing in a new head writer for a creative overhaul. Now, after that 3-year behind-the-scenes roller coaster, Daredevil Born Again is finally here. And while it might not quite reach the heights of the Netflix show, which at its best functioned as both a prestige drama and a John Wick-level action thriller, it's a lot better than the MCU's continuation of Daredevil could have been.
Yes, it's true. What they say, it's better than devil, you know. I'll forgive and forget.
Right off the bat, I was glad to see that it wasn't Disneyfied at all. The reboot is just as dark and gritty and uncompromisingly violent as the Netflix series. In its opening minutes, it delivers a typically brutal hallway fight, kills off a beloved character in gruesome fashion, and has Matt callously throw Bullseye off a roof. When Daredevil made the switch from Netflix to Disney Plus, I was worried the show's signature violence would become toothless PG-13 play fighting. But Born Again isn't afraid to break some bones and spill some blood. Born Again has to simultaneously function as Season 1 of a new show and Season 4 of an old show. It has to make sense to new viewers who haven't seen the Netflix show, but it also has to connect to its predecessor enough to please fans of the Netflix show as a direct continuation. This is a really tough line to walk, and I think the series manages it quite well. It follows on from the established characters and storylines of the Netflix show, but quickly shakes it all up. Within 10 minutes, Born Again kills off Foggy, breaks up Matt's existing social circle, and introduces a new supporting cast, a new law firm, a new setting, and Matt's retirement from being Daredevil. So yes, it is a continuation of the Netflix show, but it's also pretty much a brand new story. Daredevil Born Again is essentially a new origin story. It's the story of how a retired Daredevil eventually decides to put the red horns back on his head and fight crime once again. It's a bit disappointing that it takes him so long to get back in the suit, especially after the opening scene of the pilot delivered such a perfect Daredevil action sequence, but there are still plenty of great fight scenes in civilian clothes along the way. Disney's Daredevil show lives up to the John Wick style intensity of the Netflix show's fight choreography. And after all the build up to Matt putting the Daredevil suit back on, I love how anticlimactically it portrays his snap decision to put it back on.
911.
Fuck it.
It was worth the wait to see him kick the shit out of Muse. Talk about a satisfying beatdown. You can see evidence of the case of the week procedural this show was before it got retooled. The cases clearly just got stretched out to a couple of episodes with more serialized elements wedged in between. The White Tiger storyline, for example, was probably just one episode in the show's original form. The serialization sometimes made things a bit too convenient. What are the odds that Matt's girlfriend would be Fisk's therapist and Muse's therapist? If Frank Castle was the kind of guy to get therapy, she'd probably be his therapist too. Honestly, I don't have a problem with it being more episodic. The St. Paddy's Day bank heist episode was my favourite of the season, and that's a perfect example of a standalone Daredevil story. It succinctly sets up a contained conflict, an armed robbery at a New York bank, and it plants Matt on the scene to thwart the baddies and save the day. Since there are hostages, he can't just punch his way out of there. He needs to bide his time and strategize. The episode masterfully ratchets up the tension and builds an unlikely friendship between Matt and Kamala Khan's dad.
What's your status, lad?
On its way to a thrilling climax that wraps up this self-contained story in a nice neat bow. I would have been perfectly happy if every episode had that kind of feel. I'm glad they brought back the gritty, hard R tone of the Netflix series and the relatively grounded approach, although I do enjoy the slightly more comic booky athleticism teased in Daredevil's She-Hulk cameo. But of course, the best decision Marvel made in bringing back this show was bringing back its incredible cast. Charlie Cox is the perfect Matt Murdock and Vincent D'Onofrio is the perfect Wilson Fisk. They don't share a ton of screen time in this initial season, but they get their heat moment early in the series as Matt and Fisk sit down for diplomatic peace talks in a diner. Much like Pacino's Cop and De Niro's crook, they don't have to like each other, but they understand each other. That scene doesn't really add much, they don't come out of it with anything they didn't have going into it, but those two perfectly matched actors make it utterly compelling. It was a joy to see Jon Bernthal's Frank Castle again, and to see that he hasn't been Disneyfied at all. He's still every bit the morally grey, cold-blooded killer he was on Netflix. I also appreciated how the Punisher's role wasn't just fan service. He has a dramatic reason to be here that genuinely serves Matt's arc. Frank is a ruthless agent of vengeance who calls out Matt's cowardice in hanging up the horns and letting Foggy's killer live. Where Karen is the angel on Matt's shoulder, Frank is the devil, so to speak.
What are you doing here? Hey, Ben, good?
Overall, I really enjoyed Daredevil Born Again. It might not be on the masterpiece level of the Netflix series, but that was such a high bar, and this reboot went through so much behind-the-scenes turmoil that I'm just surprised by how close they got. Cox and D'Onofrio are endlessly watchable, the fight scenes are delightfully brutal, and the show didn't lose any of its edge in moving over to Disney. I think it's fair to say the Devil of Hell's Kitchen is back.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.